How do I get more samples? Well, traditional voiceover demos are always going to have a place, and I still am always going to say that you're going to need to have traditional voiceover demos. There's no debating the fact that more and more, particularly on casting sites, samples are where it's at. In fact, on certain casting sites, it could be possible to post hundreds of different samples. And when you think about it from an SEO standpoint, the more samples that you have on your website that are labeled accordingly, the better. You could have 5 different demos and list 5 different demos and label 5 different demos. Or if each one of those 5 demos consisted of 6 different spots and you divided them up, that gives you 30 samples. Now, each one of those 30 samples could be labeled differently, and each one of those 30 samples could build your SEO, both on your website or on an online casting site. And so that's why there's an argument to be made for the power of having samples. Collect more samples. Building out a Voice 123 profile, you want samples. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of samples. So then the question becomes, how the heck do I get all these samples? Because obviously you probably don't have the means to go out and produce another dozen different demos that each one has 5 different spots on it. So the easiest way to collect more samples is to start diving into your work. But that brings up another interesting point to ponder. You've often heard it said that it is easier to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission. And while that may be true if you are thinking about buying a new smoker and you haven't quite convinced your wife of that yet, it's probably not so true when it comes to using your voiceover work for samples. I am always going to be a proponent of saying that it is better to ask permission first than have to beg for forgiveness later. That can put you in a really awkward predicament. Now, there's an argument that could be made that it's your voice, so you have rights to it. Fine. If you want to make that argument, go ahead and make that argument. But at the end of the day, if you tick off the client, they're not going to hire you again. So it really doesn't matter whether your argument is valid or not. What matters is, what does the client want, and do you have permission from the client? So if you are thinking that you need to get more samples for your website or get more samples for your online casting site profiles, and you're going to collect those samples from projects that you've worked on, which is a great idea, and you should do it, always, always, always make sure that you are asking for permission to use those samples for demo purposes before you just assume that you can. And here's an added benefit of that. By going back through all of the invoices that you worked on in 2022, for example, and reaching out to all of those different clients to ask for permission to use all of those different projects for demo purposes and for samples, you're now giving yourself a reason to reach out to them again. You're giving yourself an excuse to get into their inbox. You're giving yourself an opportunity to bring yourself top of mind, which from a marketing standpoint is one of the best things that you can do. So if you need more samples for your website, or if you want more samples for your online casting, go ahead and try and get them from projects that you've worked on. Just make sure that you are asking for permission first and use it as an opportunity to make sure that they haven't forgotten about you.